A Quiet Place Part 2, written and directed by John Krasinski, who also co-wrote and directed the original A Quiet Place, but actually Part 2 this time around is all him. And the film stars John Krasinski, Emily Blunt, Cillian Murphy, Millicent Simmons, and Noah Jupe. So Part 2 picks up exactly where the first left off, where the Abbott family continues to fight for survival in silence, but only this time away from home facing the terrors of the outside world. Also, as a quick disclaimer, this review will contain spoilers from the first movie, A Quiet Place, but there will be no spoilers pertaining to the current film, A Quiet Place Part 2. I just wanted to make that clear. Now, we all know that for the most part, usually sequels tend to just suck. That's just the way it is. That's kind of the way it's always been. And usually if there is a sequel for a film that we really tend to like, the sequels are obviously cash grabs, and audiences can detect the bullshit from a mile away. And I'm pretty sure for the most part, critics have been giving the film really good reviews. And they wouldn't be wrong, honestly. This is probably the best sequel that I've seen in years. And honestly, I am so happy to say that, since this film was maybe my most anticipated film of 2021. Even with all the delays and, not even sure that it would even release this year, or at least in theaters. But I knew that John Krasinski really wanted a theatrical release for this film. And even now, still having issues with how many days that it should stay on the big screen. But that's another topic for another time. Now, to say that John Krasinski knows what he's doing behind the camera is simply an understatement. I mean, from the set pieces to the composition and visual storytelling, it's clear that the man is simply gifted. Shit, for example, some people didn't even find out that the family in the film actually uses solar power on their farm until much later after the film's release. And I think this is because of how Krasinski adds details to the composition without putting them directly in your face, which doesn't bother me at all, but it's just one of those things. Now, although Emily Blunt isn't quite at the forefront of this sequel, I think her character plays a similar position to the first. But instead of being a somewhat supportive character alongside Krasinski, it's kind of a support character alongside her children. Now, in my opinion, and this also might be a fact as well, but I think this time around the characters have a lot more responsibility. And this is mainly because Lee, the father, isn't there anymore, but also because mistakes actually have very strong, serious consequences this time around. I mean, of course, before the characters always needed to stay aware of their surroundings at all times. I mean, that much hasn't changed. But now just the smallest of mistakes could lead to the worst of situations. And this time there's no one to jump on the grenades anymore like the father used to do. And I'm talking about the first movie specifically. It still bothers me that the father sacrificed himself. Like, come on. There were other ways out of that, but whatever. Maybe Krasinski wanted to be behind the camera more, or maybe it was just more for shock factor, who the hell knows. But he was always there to be the safety belt for his kids. And to see the types of situations that occur now without him around introduces even more suspense than the first film. Don't get me wrong though, overall the original is still a better film to me. But there are some things that I think the sequel does better, and in my opinion, Suspense is definitely one of those things. But that's just my opinion. For example, the type of suspense that we get at the end of the original is the same type of suspense that we get, but the whole time, like almost 100% of the time throughout the sequel. We barely get a moment to rest because there's so much going on with each character having their own personal narrative this time around. Which actually brings me to the character development. There were so many great personal obstacles placed out here for the characters to overcome, and seeing the kids adapt to their new reality and be forced to take on new hardships depicted some great character development. I'm just really satisfied with the majority of the decisions made in the sequel. I even love the fact that we are able to confirm new details regarding the creatures, and a badass opening sequence that truly sets the tone for exactly how the flow of the entire film is going to feel. It's damn near non-stop because we get so much monster action this time, which I was so happy to see. I mean, if I had to guess, and I'm sure this is probably very obvious to some people, but I'd say the budget was definitely much more generous for the sequel. So I'm giving A Quiet Place Part 2 a 9 out of 10. The original is like a 9.5 out of 10, by the way, for me. But damn it, I just loved every second, to be completely honest. Shit, I had a smile on my face throughout most of the runtime. Also, I loved Cillian Murphy in the movie as well. His chemistry combined with the existing cast just felt like a good fit to me. I really feel like that was a good casting choice. The only thing that I didn't like or had mixed feelings about were some events that occurred later in the film pertaining to the characters and some events that happen and sort of where they end up. Which I can't really get into because of spoilers, spoilers, but there's some explanations surrounding this event and how things sort of end up the way it does that I just wasn't quite satisfied with. And although I wasn't quite satisfied with it, I just wasn't completely sold on the idea. But I still love the movie though. And A Quiet Place 2 hits theaters May 28th, which is next Friday. But there you have it. If you enjoyed the content, you know what to do. Thank you for watching.